location, along with making it next to the phase one office, which just kind of creates some nice synergy there. If there's a tenant that comes into phase one and wants to expand, they now have that opportunity to have more of a campus versus the way that the offices were split before. So we think this makes the phase two office more viable than the phase one office. And we also like the location on Route 7 better. And then the previous phase two location now only has the residential building there. The other big move was breaking up that sort of mega block. If you remember, on block A, there was one very large rectangular shaped building, which was going to be the multifamily building. We've now broken that up into two smaller buildings, which we think just kind of makes for a better streetscape experience on Route 7. It also provided the opportunity to create, it's a word that I learned from Evan on this project, but a WNRF type environment. That pretty much means it's a shared alley sort of situation where you'll have cars and pedestrians, and it's usually somewhat activated. We have a couple of examples at that down at our P.N. Hoffman development, the Wharf in downtown, which we'd love to schedule a time to tour folks through just to kind of get an idea for the work that we've done previously and some ideas that you guys might take back and want to see employed here in some capacity. So I think all those changes are really improvements to the plan, and we're pretty happy overall with how this has turned out. The overall site plan with the prominent kind of main feature being the commons remains relatively unchanged from before. This is just kind of showing the phasing diagrams and the lot lines. This is the ground floor plane, so showing the retail portions of the site. This looks like the old, yeah, sorry.
So this one has previous.
Right, this is a previous version of the ground floor, and then this is the new version of the ground floor. So a relatively similar amount of retail. We have now moved the grocer all the way to the corner of Haycock and 7, which is another kind of response to comments from the city of wanting that corner to be highly visible and highly active. This is the old plan, just showing the different colors for the different uses. Again, that salmon color building on Block B was the senior housing building that was slated to be that 12 to 15 stories. I know you'll see in the new plan that that's now moved. That salmon color building's now in the upper right-hand corner. We've moved the hotel to the center of the site. Being that that's going to share the space with the music venue, we feel like that's kind of the better place for it. Really activate the commons and kind of activate the center of the site. It's also a nice complement to the office use to have the hotel right next door to that. And then the Block C building, which was the hotel location, is now the micro apartment building. These are just showing the general phasing and program summaries. These numbers actually haven't changed. We were able to kind of push and pull at the actual boundaries of the site and able to fit all the same amount of program on the site as previous, which allowed us to keep the economics the same with the city, which I think was a big win for everybody. This is just showing a couple alternates. So there is a possibility that once we get into the actual design of the buildings, if we're not able to fit the full program for the hotel in that center location, we might have to move it back to its previous location, but we are making commitments as to the height and massing of that building, whether it is hotel or micro, in response to the school board's comments. The plan on the right-hand side shows the possibility of swapping the office and the residential components of phase 2 if we needed to, for some reason, due to comments from whomever, go back to a completely straight square plan versus the bump out that we're showing on the left-hand side for the phase 2 office. We could swap the phase 2 office and residential uses and get the plan completely on the square. It would involve needing to move the senior back to its original location. So we're hoping that that's not a route that we have to take. But This is a axon just to show you generally the site, kind of bird's eye view at the Route 7 and Haycock corner. Another view from the bird's eye view from sort of the high school perspective, seeing the high school plaza there. This is that diagram showing, so this is a confusing diagram for a lot of folks. So the bottom number in those circles is showing the max density that we are allowing for via this SEE submission. And the top number is what we're currently showing and most probably will show at SESP as well. So the most interest to you is probably that building on block C. And we'll go to the other diagram and you can kind of see where we've stepped that maximum massing down. Again, it's unlikely that we'll go over 7 stories period, but in the event that through the SESP process, we decide to build more height or change construction types from what's currently being proposed, we're saying we could go up to 10 stories in the middle there and 15 on the commons, but no more than 7 right up adjacent to the school plaza. These are some of the updated shadow studies reflecting these new proposed massings. I think overall it has improved quite a bit from what was previously shown, particularly as it relates to the school plaza. And so in the that middle diagram, I think is that lower middle diagram is kind of the most useful because it shows at what time of day in each season. And remember, these diagrams are showing the extreme of each season. So on either end of the extremes that you're seeing, it gets, better or worse depending which way we're going in the seasons. But this middle low diagram shows the time that the sun comes off the buildings, which I think is just helpful to know. And this is all in the SEE submission package, which should be available for everyone to take a closer look at. This is kind of getting into parking a little bit. One thing I guess maybe to mention, I don't know if this is the diagram to mention it, but we have discussed with the schools during our committee meetings the possibility of returning to the plan of having that school drop-off kind of turnaround. It's sort of shown in black dotted lines on this plan. So right now, Street A sort of dead ends at the school parking lot, surface parking lot. We have talked to the schools about the potential of putting back in that parent drop-off and continuing Street A through to Mustang Alley as was originally shown. We're waiting sort of on Jennifer and her team from Gilbane to tell us whether they'd still be able to fit the same amount of parking in if we allowed that parking to extend into a partial portion of the Phase 2 office site. So we're sort of waiting on that study, and we'll have further conversations with the schools about that once we get that information. Sure.
Just a quick comment about that. I think that may be an important move for us to consider as we continue our conversations to put that turnaround, that's the black dotted line there, back into the plan. It's a little unclear of how many spaces that would remove from the overall 400, but as it stands now with the site circulation for parent drop-off and pickup, it would happen in that surface parking lot. And by putting a separated D sort of loop up at the top, it would keep that site circulation out of that parking lot. So there could be some real safety, some safety precautions by putting that in that would be resolved. So I'm telling you that now because as we continue our conversations, one of the things we've said all along is that we would end up with 400 parking spaces total, and that's what we're required to have by code. If, for example, that were to take up, say, 10 to 15 parking spaces, that overall number could drop to 385 or 390. And if that were to happen, we would have to file a waiver or submit a waiver and the like. But I think the trade-off might be something for us to consider. We don't have to make that decision today or in the next week, but I do want to put it on your radar that we're really paying attention to it because the idea of doing kiss and ride inside that surface parking lot seems very complicated and complex as we sort of begin to map it out. So it may be better just to take it completely away.
These are all sections. I'm going to kind of speed through them because they remain relatively the same until we get to this one. This is that cycle track up on the sort of northern portion of Mustang Alley. The right side reflects what we had originally proposed, and the left side reflects what we're now proposing based on feedback, again, from schools and the school board, about making that extra safe. I think there was some concern that the bollards were not enough of a barrier for that cycle track and the roads. So now there's a full kind of tree pit planter box situation. We've widened the track, and it's now more of a shared use path. So both cyclists and pedestrians would be expected to use that until which time that Virginia Tech does their development, and they're expected that they'll put a sidewalk along there. But until then, it would be a shared peds and bikes path. So we think this is another overall improvement to the plan, and came out of comments from the public. These are showing Street A. The reason there's two different sections now is if you look at the little plan, entering Street A from Haycock Road there, the street is at 50 feet wide, and that's largely to provide a turning lane into the garage for the future grocer, as well as the multifamily and condo building on that block. And then once you pass that alley entrance, it narrows to 40 feet. These are just images. I think another positive of this plan that we haven't talked about yet is there's a lot less of that above grade garage that's exposed now. So this is just, showing some placemaking for those exposed areas. But in general, it's a lot more shielded in this plan. And so I think maybe less of an eyesore. I know it was a big concern for everyone before. This is showing tree canopy, which we've been able to maintain fairly similar to the original submission. Just some close-ups of that landscaping, again, fairly unchanged from the original condition. Some more of the placemaking imagery for the commons. One other thing that we have done is narrowed the commons where it intersects with Route 7. That was for two reasons. One was to allow ourselves that sort of overhang on the office that you're seeing, that kind of triangle shape that's coming off the rectangle. That reflects the office building from the second story above. So what that does is provide a little bit of a covered outdoor seating area for a potential restaurant there. It also allowed us to get the square footage we needed out of the office in that same location. The other thing it sets up for is a potential future left turn out of the site, going east back towards the city. It's not currently contemplated in our plan due to some pushback from Fairfax County, but this configuration of the commons allows for that to be a possibility in the future. These are some more placemaking images for the commons, more about the trees. And this is showing the overall site and I guess how the parcel boundary has changed from the original. I think this starts to get into site civil drawings, which, while very important and a lot of work goes into this, not usually what everyone wants to see in these public presentations. So if anyone has any questions, you can let me know.
Questions or comments from the board? Ms. Litton?
I just have one question, and maybe it was probably because I just didn't understand as we went along. I was thinking with the changes, that line on the left side went straight down, but it looks like it kind of bumps out with phase two. And so we still have all the same amount of parking we'd planned originally?